This past week, Marvel and Disney released the first episode of Loki on Disney+, so let's talk about it. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I am Tommy B, and this is the Bailey Broadcast, where we talk about everything movies, television, and entertainment. Like I said in the intro, we're going to be talking about episode 1 of Loki, called Burdened with Glorious Purpose, which was so fitting. I think, you guys, that this is probably the best pilot episode out of the 3 shows that we've gotten from Marvel and Disney so far. It was so well done, so well written, and even though there wasn't a lot of action, there's just a lot to talk about, so let's get right to it, okay? This is by far the best indication of what's to come for Phase 4 in the MCU. It does a great job at introducing the Timekeepers and the Time Variance Authority, while establishing who Loki is, still from the 2012 Avengers film, who is still more villain than anti-hero. Which is great because it never felt like it didn't fit. It felt very natural and organic to mesh this Time Variance Authority and multiverse, idea with a character like Loki, who is the god of mischief and obviously can do many things with his abilities. So the show starts back in New York in 2012 at the end of Avengers, and we see that he obviously just got his ass kicked and it's not going very well for him. Jumps forward to Avengers Endgame scene when they're in the hall and Hulk smashes through the door and the Tesseract lands right at Loki's feet. And this is where the show really begins. When we finally get to see him, he just lands in Mongolia and he's approached by 3 Mongolian tribesmen or people, and he begins to do his Loki thing, right? This guy believes that he is owed. He believes that he is given, Midgard is his to take. He wants to be a god king. And so he clearly, tries to get the upper ground on these people and says, I am Loki, Prince of Asgard, and I am burdened with glorious purpose. And they're like, in their own language, who the fuck are you? They don't understand him at all. And he starts to try to, go again. And then all of a sudden we see the TVA, the Time Variance Authority, step in. And he's like, never mind. And he goes off to talk to the TVA. And, it was a great way to showcase, I think, the subtle comedy that we're going to be getting through this series. And it kind of just fits perfectly. Tom Hiddleston is just fantastic at delivering, this kind of, just easy to go, comedic relief, while still being very serious at the same time. So the TVA comes up to him and they're like, you just, broke the sacred timeline, you're under arrest. And he's like, I'm a god, you're gonna get out of my way. And she's like, I don't think so. Bam, whaps him with her baton, slows him down to 1/16 speed while feeling the pain in real time. And it was a really cool scene, showcasing the TVA's power and really kind of, getting us established to what they're capable of. So they arrest Loki, they take him back to the TVA headquarters. He gets introduced to the clerk, I guess you can say, in the front entrance, Casey, who is given the Tesseract, and he's like, what is it, And Loki's like, what do you mean, what is it? It's the Tesseract. It's a space stone. It's very, delicate. Be careful with it. And he's like, Tesseract? That sounds dumb. This guy, Casey, I've seen him in a few shows. He's recently been on Tacoma FD with the guys from Super Troopers. He's a really funny comedian. So I love that they kind of put him in this role. I thought he handled it very well. But yeah, when, you get into their headquarters, you see, obviously it's got a different tone to it. The color scheme is very almost nostalgic. It had this like 1970s vibe with the color scheme, a lot of oranges and kind of warm tones to it. And then, the shapes of, the lightings and everything. It just felt kind of 70s like. And so anyways, the guard takes him to the first elevator door. He goes through a series of floors and he's approached, or, he sees this robot on the wall that has, a twitchy eye, which you don't feel very comfortable, with a robot pointing this, gun at you. You don't feel very comfortable in that situation. and the robot strips him down out of his, Asgardian leather, and he's just like, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute, he's freaking out, and then he gets dropped down to the next level where you see this another clergy member, I guess we'll call him, with his cat who looks kind of afraid, and now, he's in his TVA jumpsuit, Loki, and the guy's like, please sign here. This is everything you've ever said. And he's like, what? This is absurd. Another page prints down, and he's like, this too, And so, they're just he just feels like this is ridiculous, obviously. He's never heard of these people, and yet he can't get away. He's got this collar around him. They're controlling his movement. It's unlike anything he's ever, dealt with before. So after he signs that, then he goes down to the next floor where he sees this guy on the other side of what looks like a metal detector, but apparently it tracks to see if you are not robotic, you're an living organism that, most plants call that have a soul. And he's like, yeah, of course I am. Do not most people not know if they're a robot? And he's like, yeah, thank you for confirming that. He's like, wait, what if I am a robot and I don't even know it? He's like, please, sir, we don't have all day. Let's hurry this up. And so he goes through it. He's fine and whatnot. And it was just a really kind of a funny scene, once again, with this humor that I think we're going to see throughout the series. But once he goes through, it's obviously he has a soul. His temporal aura is captured, which we still don't know, what those colors mean or anything yet, but I think we'll find out eventually what all that means. But as far as the episode goes, this was a great, kind of introduction to the TVA. It kind of felt like watching something from the Twilight Zone or even the X-Files, especially with like the main title coming across the screen with the black and white and the letters flickering different fonts. It was just a really cool style. I really am digging what they're doing with this character in this series. So then he's taken to the judge to plead guilty or not guilty of his crimes of escaping the sacred timeline. Actually, before he gets to the judge, he goes through this line of being assessed by the judge or whatever. We get this other character who it seems like he's right off Wall Street. He's told to, take a ticket by the Minutemen. He's like, no, up yours. I'm not taking a ticket. He goes through the line. The Minuteman also tells Loki, take a ticket. Loki decides to take a ticket. I don't know if he just was like, okay, fine, whatever. But we see what happens to the guy that doesn't take a ticket. He gets reset, and it looks like he just gets turned to dust. And, it was funny because all of a sudden we get this commercial, I guess, or announcement on the TV that's also very retro with this character, Miss Minutes, who kind of describes, what the TVA are. They were created by the Timekeepers, thousands of years ago when there was a multiversal war and the Timekeepers decided to make one timeline instead of multiple and into this sacred timeline, which we all live by. And, after, seeing this Wall Street guy get turned into dust, and hearing how take that ticket by Miss Minutes or you'll pay the price, Loki freaks out a little bit. He goes looking for it, he finds the ticket, and then he gets taken to the judge. So he's talking to the judge, and she's like, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty? And she's like, I am a god. The only thing I'm guilty of is being the god of mischief, obviously, but did I break your sacred timeline? No, that would be the Avengers, and she's like, well, we're not talking about them. And he's like, well, they clearly did it. I smelled two Tony Starks, or I smelled the clone of two Starks. It was, anyone can notice that they're, we're messing with the timeline and whatnot. So he was clearly aware, of the time heist back when he was being captured, and I thought that was kind of interesting. I guess I'm not too surprised because he is, the master of illusions, and I think he can, identify with a lot of those, things that are happening around him. They do a cut scene after that, and we get introduced to Owen Wilson's character, Mobius, who is in France, I think in like the late 1500s, and he's investigating what looks to be a murder scene with bodies scattered all over this chapel or church. And, it's clear indications to them that it's the same variant, which is what they call the people who escape their timeline. The same variant who's causing, all these other murders. I think there was like 6 on the last week that one of the Minutemen said, and So Owen Wilson is in charge. Mobius is in charge of tracking down this dangerous variant. And in comes this child who scares the Minutemen for a second. Owen Wilson's like, wait, let me go talk to him and ask the kid, did you see anything, or who did this and whatnot. And the kid just points to a stained glass that has what looks to be a picture of the devil. No, it is not Mephisto. I'm calling it right now. I think Mephisto is going to be coming later. Owen Wilson says, oh, him, don't worry about him. The devil's scared of us. We'll take care of it. And the kid smiles and his teeth are all blue. And we find out that the variant who was there gave him some candy that looked like it did not belong in that century. Very futuristic looking. And so, the kid gets let go, and all of a sudden another Minuteman comes in and he's like, sir, you should take a look at this. And it's a file on Loki saying that he's been apprehended. And immediately Owen Wilson kind of has an epiphany, and off to headquarters he goes. And that's where he kind of steps in during the trial of Loki. And right before, the judge passes the guilty sentence for him to be reset, which freaks him out, Owen Wilson's Mobius is like, well, I think I know what to do with him. And it was the first time we see these characters together, but not the last time. The chemistry between Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson in the next few scenes was awesome. I think they played so well, off of each other. And most of the lines with their scenes, I think, were delivered by Tom Hiddleston, who did a great job. Again, the writing and the dialogue were great. But even, Owen Wilson's character, who's there, almost in like a psychiatrist role, asking questions and listening, it was just very well done. And there was obviously some, comedy, within that, given Owen Wilson's history, that you can't be too surprised. But they start to, unlock who is Loki. And Owen Wilson turns on this projector of the greatest hits of Loki's life. And, they start talking about how, oh, well, you think, you're a god king, and, you are the rightful heir to this, Midgard, blah, 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 blah. And then Owen Wilson, one of my favorite lines is like, well, for someone who thinks so highly of themselves as a god king, as a ruler, you sure do lose a lot. And Loki's like, son of a bitch, you're kind of right, but I'm not going to admit to it. And, they first show him losing just in a matter of minutes ago to the Avengers in New York. And then they start getting into stuff that hasn't happened yet, because Loki left his timeline. And so Loki's seeing some things that, he doesn't know are going to happen yet, but do, like his mother dying by the Dark Elves, which technically was his fault, because he led the Dark Elves, who he thought was leading them to Thor, ended up going to his mother and killing his mother. We see his father dying, but also some, I think things that really helped Loki realize that he needs to kind of change, not to mention his death. We see him looking at Thanos killing him in Avengers Infinity War. And so, this whole scene with him and Owen Wilson was very well written. I don't know how to describe it. The ideas and the philosophies behind it. Is there free will, or is everything predetermined and destined to go a certain way? I think is going to be one of the main themes of this show going forward. I think it's a huge, kind of a theory and philosophy that is going to, really make all of us kind of stay hooked into what's going to happen. They're talking and Owen Wilson is just trying to see what, makes Loki tick. Do you really like hurting people? You hurt Phil, you killed Phil Coulson, but what did that do? All you do is bad things, and you think that you're the good guy, that you are righteous in your ways, but all you really do are bring out the best in others. And I think a lot of that conversation really kind of took Loki by surprise. Because remember, this version of Loki is not the same version of Loki that we get in Thor Ragnarok, or even, before his death in Avengers Infinity War. This guy is very ruthless. He's trying to be, something that he really isn't. I think Loki just walks that fine line constantly through the comics and in the MCU. But Owen Wilson's Mobius is like, look, nothing you do is going to turn out the way you think. And I think it was a revelation for Loki and Tom Hiddleston. And just right when you think they're making really good progress, they get interrupted by another Minuteman, and Mobius has to step out of the room for a second. And when that happens, Owen Wilson has to help Tom Hiddleston off the floor because he time zapped him back, and the chair that Loki threw was gone, so he was on the ground. And when he did that, Loki, being Loki, grabs one of the devices that's controlling him out of Owen Wilson's pocket, and he's able to kind of roam the headquarters a little bit more. Speaking of which, when we see Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston walking from where he's being judged to like the interrogation room, we see kind of the world that the TVA agents live in, the city or whatever. And it was so well designed. It really kind of reminded me of The Fifth Element in a lot of the way, just the way it was, it looked, and the flying cars. And Tom Hiddleston, his Loki's like, I thought magic doesn't exist here, and he's like, that's not magic. And what it is, who knows, maybe some kind of cosmic energy. Yeah, this world that we're being introduced to is just looking super cool. And so Loki, going back on track here, Loki, he's kind of out of the interrogation room, he's wandering the headquarters, and he runs back into Casey, the clerk, from the beginning of the episode. And he's like, what was your name? And he's like, Casey. And he's like, Casey, give me the Tesseract or I'll gut you like a fish. And he's like, what's a fish? And he's like, wait, how do you not know what a fish is? He's like, well, I lived my whole life behind a desk. I want to know what I'm being threatened with before I comply. And it was a very nice comedic performance by both of those characters or actors. And he's like, it's death. I'm going to kill you really badly. He's like, oh, okay. And so he gets to his car. He opens the car and he gives back the Tesseract. But while doing so, Loki also sees inside there all these other Infinity Stones from different timelines. And I think it really made Loki realize that these stones in this world, in this TVA, aren't the end all of power. They're not the most powerful things. The TVA can easily control. I mean, the Casey guy said most of the other people there use them as paperweights. And so I think Loki realized at that moment there's no escaping. There's really no going back to his timeline. And he ends up finding his way back to the interrogation room, where Mobius, Owen Wilson's character, shows up, who had been looking for him. And they had this, again, really nice conversation, which led to one of the best lines, I think, in the episode, which was, everything that Loki is and does is an illusion. An illusion that, I want to get this right now. Yeah, he says that the illusion he does is created to promote fear, which will then create power by the weak. So what he's basically saying is Loki is the weak one, the insecure one, and he uses fear to gain power, and it's just an illusion. And he just realized nothing that I'm going to do from what I've seen in these videos is going to benefit me or work out in the way I think it's going to. So it was a really kind of an eye-opening moment, and it was that moment really that Owen Wilson's Mobius says, okay, you do have some good left inside of you. I need your help. We have this very dangerous variant, and only you can help us bring him in. And he's like, who is it? And he's like, well, it's you. And so we finally learned that the villain of this series is going to be a variant different than this Loki, but a more dangerous variant of Loki from another timeline. And this, variant is going all over. I think it ends up in Oklahoma in the late 1800s, where the Minutemen are trying to, they're tracking down this evil Loki, where, this Loki has them trapped in this field and sets the field on fire, and they all start burning to death, while, that Loki is able to, capture the reset capsule that resets the timeline, which apparently that's what this evil version is collecting for some reason. We don't know yet, but that was the end of the episode. And so your interest and the intrigue behind the show is instantly there, right? And you can't wait to see what happens next. It feels like it's going to be a time-traveling murder mystery, which is such a cool combination with one character, trying to track down another version of himself. So it was, I think, the best pilot episode out of the 3 shows we've gotten so far. I loved WandaVision. I really enjoyed Falcon and Winter Soldier. But this is, exactly, I think, what we needed. Something that kind of leaves you wanting more. And I don't know how many episodes this series is going to be, but I hope it's at least 8, because I just can't wait every Wednesday to binge watch it over and over again. So thank you so much, guys, for watching this video. If you are new here, please hit that like and subscribe button and leave your comments down below. What were your favorite parts of this episode? Who was your favorite character that was introduced? Or, was it still Tom Hiddleston? Now let's get into what was lost in imagination. So what was lost in imagination in this week's episode of Loki, I think, was all about, self-identity, and realizing sometimes, we do have free will, but I think at the same time, you have to understand that you only can control so much. And the best thing you can do is be the best person you can be. And I think that's so true, to not look too forward into the future, but really just enjoy the present, live in the present, and be the best you can be. I love that kind of message. My wife loves to plan for the future, but I like to live in the present, because you never know when your last day is going to be. And as much as you want to plan for the future, what's better than right now with the moments and the memories you can make right now with the ones that you love? So that, to me, was the message lost in imagination. And thank you so much. And we'll see you next time on the Bailey Broadcast. Take care.